Welcome back and thank you very much. This is Sunrise on 3FM 92.7. Nana dear or a winner. And I don't know where Abiam got his songs from. But this morning, we're trying to just examine the one district, one factory promise, the whole initiative, and how it's been carried out so far. I've read for you itemized some of the places where we're told that factories would be and how many people were going to be employed as a result of the establishment of those factories. We have also asked you to share with us your district and the factories that you have. Some of you have told us that there are no factories in your districts. Now, you do know that if these factories exist, most of these factories will need stuff like fuel to run around, right? Their vehicles and some of their machinery and etc. etc. The price of fuel, and we'll go to another government policy, that's a gold for oil policy. We'll do the connection. Dankanama, for example, warned us that fuel prices will go up. We didn't pay attention to what he said, but eventually we saw what has happened, that fuel prices again have gone up high, irrespective or in spite of the gold for oil policy, which is still in full force. The question we want to ask this morning is, will it get any better? And the analysis that will be drawn from the effect that it will have on, what do you call it? The industrialization drive. I don't know what Helen thinks. Helen, fuel, industrialization, what do you say?
This is big words you're asking me this morning.
Oh, yes. Industrialization.
Fuel industrialization. I haven't even been able to wrap my mind around
the fuel increase.
Yes.
You've been connected to industrialization.
I'm telling you, I am at a loss. The experts must step in, please.
Well, the head of economic regulation at the National Petroleum Authority, Abbas Ibrahim Tasunti, is joining us on Zoom. Abbas, good morning. Assalam.
Good morning.
And how are you doing, sir?
I am doing well. How about you?
Great. Abbas, first clarify for us, is the gold for oil policy still on?
Yes, it is.
If it is on, why are fuel prices still going up? What's happening?
Okay, so I think that is where we need to provide clarity. Gold for oil program does not necessarily mean that the price of fuel will not change. I'm sure if you are in the commercial business, you would be aware that price of products change every now and then, particularly fuel. Fuel is traded on the world market on a daily basis, and the prices change on a daily basis. So you cannot go onto the market and buy fuel at the same price throughout the year. So as the price on the world market change, it is expected that the price here in Ghana would also change just as it does everywhere in the world. So we've had price of petroleum products on the world market rise in the past few months, particularly from June, after they dropped for a while. So this is why we are seeing that reflects in our prices here. Maybe to explain the gold for oil policy properly, this policy was brought in, first of all, to do away with the FX exchange rate exposure that the industry was facing. One of the major challenges we have here in Ghana has got to do with unavailability of dollars to import products, and in this case, petroleum products. So the gold for oil policy, the goal was that use the gold you have to procure oil, so that you don't need to look for the dollar itself. So basically, you buy the gold from the small scale line, the small licensed gold exporters who used to export this gold themselves, and then once you buy the gold from them in cedis at a specific dollar rate, because when they sell the gold, they would expect to get dollars.
Right.
So the gold is bought from them at a specific dollar rate. And then this gold that has been bought from them is either exchanged for oil if the supplier is interested in the barter system, or it is liquidated and then you get the dollars to pay for the oil that you are bringing in. So what this means is that when the oil arrives, in pricing that product that has arrived, then you know the exchange rates to use to price the product, because you already bought the gold and you know the rate at which you bought the gold.
Right.
Unlike the normal system where you have to bring in the oil, you sell in cedis, and then you now look for dollars to buy. Because you don't know the rate at which you buy the dollar, you tend to use speculative exchange rates in setting that price. And sometimes using speculative exchange rates, either you are going to use a rate that makes you incur huge losses or you over speculate. So our market was facing this major challenge, and therefore the gold for oil addresses that challenge, and therefore it gives us certainty with regards to pricing petroleum products. It doesn't mean that every cargo of product that is imported under the program is fixed or has the same price as we bought in January. The price will keep changing.
Did gold for oil really give us cheap oil, as we were told by the vice president? He says that the gold for oil was going to reduce fuel prices. He also said that gold for oil policy has stabilized the exchange rate, which you spoke about. But we'll come to that. First question is, did we really get cheap fuel?
So as I'm saying, so like from the regulatory point of view, we monitor the program as I've explained. So what I've explained is that the stability that we're looking for, which is if you are using speculative exchange rates, then you tend to sometimes have very high prices because you may be using higher exchange rates than you would have used if you knew what the exchange rate you bought the dollar at was. So in using this, if you remember the very first cargo under gold for oil, there was a huge difference between that price and the market price. So the gold for oil price was significantly lower than the market price. And so what happened is that the gold for oil now, because it has certainty with exchange rates and gives us some stability in terms of the FX, you have the certainty with the FX that are used to price. You are not forced to price higher. Secondly, because of the competitive nature of the program, we had a lot of suppliers who were interested to supply the product to us. So they were getting very competitive premiums. They were getting
the bottom line is that we got cheaper fuel. Is that what you're saying?
So the product was comparatively cheaper than if we were to use a regular system where you have to use speculative exchange rate and go to the market and import on your own in smaller quantities. That was one of the things that it addressed. So now if you look at the price we have now on the market, most of them benchmark their prices to the gold for oil price because of the competitive nature of the product, of the gold for oil prices. I think I need to mention that this this policy was not serve-only bust. Because the certainty with exchange rates is a good thing, all the private sector people have also expressed interest to be under this gold purchase program so that they can also get their dollars through the gold purchase program. So we've had several discussions with them and with the Bank of Ghana so that we can bring them under the program for them to get their dollars through the gold purchase program. So the whole objective is to ensure that we get that certainty with exchange rates, and that helps to stabilize price or not make prices move as high as they would have if you didn't have the exchange rate certainty. Aside that, I think another.
You know that for the gold for oil policy, there was a caveat that you needed to have a certain number of filling stations under your wing before you could benefit from that. So if you didn't have, for example, was it 35 filling stations, you couldn't, or you weren't going to benefit from gold for oil, even if you had 32 or 34. Now, how is the even distribution of these things that you talk about going to reach the person who only has access to one filling station, courtesy where they live, maybe in the hinterland, and that's the only fuel station that's available to him? How are they going to benefit from this?
Okay, so what you just mentioned, this criteria that you mentioned was when we had just started the program. Please, can you hear me?
Yes, you're live. I can hear you.
So that was when we had just started the program. So that was in January. And in January, we imported just one cargo. So that was the very first cargo. And like I mentioned, there was a huge disparity between the price, the price of the gold for oil and the market price. So we wanted to see the impact at the pump. And because that cargo was not enough to serve everyone, we had to come up with a criteria so that we select companies who had more stations for consumers to be able to feel the benefits of the program. But since the program started, the volumes, we actually said that when the volumes increase and there's enough to serve everyone, we are going to remove that criteria. So I think somewhere in February or ending of February, that criteria was taken out. So as we speak, all oil marketing companies are able to buy products from the BDCs if they meet their commercial terms. And all BDCs are open to buy from BOS if they want to. So since February or so, we've had every company buying the product if they want to. Remember that the gold for oil does not serve 100% of our market. So we have oil marketing companies who buy from the private importers who import on their own, and we have those who buy from some of the BDCs. And actually, a number of them do a mix. So, and also, as we speak right now, there's no huge disparity between the gold for oil price and the open market price because, like I said, most of them benchmark their price to the good for oil price. So you don't see any significant difference. So there's no need to have a criteria and to monitor whether the price is reflecting at the pump or not. The prices are almost the same. So as we speak, there's no criteria, there's no selected company of, there are no selected company of selected group of OMCs who buy good for oil. It is open to all OMCs.
So you insist that we're buying fuel for cheap. Is that the case?
No, I'm not saying we're buying fuel for cheap. I'm saying that fuel is comparatively cheaper and has some of the challenges that we had if we were doing the open
compared to who? Compared to whose prices?
Compared to if you didn't have a stable or a certain exchange rate. Like I mentioned, if you are going to use an exchange rate that you don't know, you may be forced to speculate. So in speculating, you use an exchange rate that is higher. Good for oil because the gold is bought at a certain dollar rate and that's the rate you use to price the oil when it arrives. You have certainty with FX. If you didn't have that, you'll be forced to speculate with exchange rates, and that makes the price higher than it should have been. So that's the advantage you get to go for it. And that's why I'm mentioning that even the those who import on their own are advocating for them to be brought under this gold purchase program, because this gives both an advantage because they are not exposed to that FX challenge of uncertainty. And we are working towards bringing all the private people under the gold purchase program so that all our imports can have this. Because you see, if we have this certainty with all our pricing, then actually we have our market not facing this FX exposure, and we don't want to do this for only the boss and not to do it for the private sector, because at the end of the day, whether you are buying from gold for oil or you are buying from the private sector, you are still buying fuel to use in your cars as a consumer. And so the objective is that now that we've seen that we are able to use a gold purchase program to pay for our oil imports, it is better that we bring all our oil imports once there's enough gold to pay to fund it.
Was the gold for oil policy a good thing, or is it a good thing?
Yes, it's actually a good program. If you listen to the explanation I've given, FX exposure or uncertainty with FX is one of the major challenges we face in our pricing here. If a number of the presentations we've done, if you look at the trend or the trend of prices on the exchange rate, they move in the same direction. We can have situations where the world market price may be falling, but if your exchange rate is depreciating, it makes your fuel price locally go up. So it's always good if you have certainty with FX. One, because it also removes your losses in terms of using speculative rates. Two, also if you tend to over-speculate, then you are also overpricing the product. But having certainty gives us a level field where we are able to know that we are using the right exchange rate in setting our price. And also it takes off this pressure from the Bank of Ghana, where everyone has to, as we speak right now, the Bank of Ghana organizes auctions, exchange rate auctions for oil imports.
Right.
Every month, BOGs, every 2 weeks, they organize this auction. They organize the last one just this Monday. And if you look at the demand from the importers and the quantum of dollar that BOG is able to give them, the maximum they are able to give them is only 30%, which means they have to go to the market and look for the 70% of the exchange rate they need to import. So if the gold for oil or the gold purchase program can provide us with all the dollar we need and not put pressure on the Bank of Ghana and its reserves, then it helps the macroeconomy as well. So it's a good policy, and we have to continue to do it well so that it serves the purpose, which is giving us stability. And at any point in time, but let's not say that because of that, fuel prices will not change. Fuel prices change every day on the world market, and as long as you are buying from the world market, you pay the world market price for it. Just that the advantages that I've mentioned, which is FX certainty, comes in and it helps the economy.
Ghana is a net exporter of crude oil, correct?
Yes, okay. So MPA does not really have direct oversight.
No, I'm just asking. I'm just asking you. I'm not asking for oversight. I'm just asking for your.
So I'm explaining.
Education.
I'm starting with.
No, I really want you to guide me. So if you answer my question first before you explain, it will be fine.
It's important I give that caveat because I don't have that information directly. We don't have information on export of crude oil. MPA regulates the downstream petroleum sector.
So you don't know as an industry person if Ghana exports crude oil or not, and is a net exporter of crude oil.
I'm speaking to facts. So we have the data. We are aware that Ghana produces enough crude oil in the country. Enough crude oil in the country. If all of that crude oil belongs to Ghana, then you can say that Ghana is a net exporter. But you know that Ghana takes about 18% as a country of what is produced in the country. So even if we are looking at just that 18% that is owned by Ghana, then Ghana cannot rely on that for our demand. But if all of the oil that is produced in this country belongs to Ghana, then we can say that Ghana has enough crude oil to meet our demand. That's if you have enough refineries to produce or that to refine all that crude oil.
Tema oil refinery is not producing now. Are they producing?
No, currently they are not operating.
So when we mine or we drill the oil, it means that because they are not producing, you cannot keep them here. You have to export them. Is that not the logical thing?
Yes, so I think the owners of the crude oil, when they refine them, so GNPC, I think, takes the share of Ghana's crude oil, and GNPC has to make value from this crude oil.
And
So
and
it's
you say that in your conversations, you are not aware if Ghana is a net exporter of crude oil or not.
I'm saying that Ghana produces enough crude oil, which is more than our demand, equivalent of finished product consumption. So Ghana, if you look at it from that angle, from production, Ghana is a net exporter of crude oil.
But Ghana is not. Ghana is not refining oil now. So it means that when we drill, you have no immediate use for it. It has to be taken out for it to be refined and brought back to you. Or maybe am I thinking too loud?
Yeah, I think you need to. What I was trying to explain to you is that Ghana produces more crude oil than the oil equivalent of oil we consume. So it makes us a net exporter of what is produced. But the question is, does Ghana own 100% of what is produced? We own about 18% of that. So if you look at that 18%, and if Ghana was to say that they are going to refine all of their 18% locally, if you have the refining capacity, that will not meet our demand as a country. But remember that all those who are producing the crude oil upstream, the Talos, the Anakazos, the ANIs and co, they are looking for value for the what they produce. So if they can sell it locally to your refineries, if they were working and get a value, or if they will export it elsewhere and get a value, they will do that. But for GNPC, what goes to GNPC as a country, the 18%, GNPC also has to make value out of it. But like you said, our refinery is not working at the moment. So maybe if our refinery was working, GNPC could have gone into agreement.
You are using a lot of ifs and buts for me.
Yeah, and that is because I don't have the direct answers to that.
You seem to have you seem to have had answers to every question I asked you until I asked you whether we're a net exporter of oil. But don't worry.
Because I don't have. That is because
I'm going to ask you. So now
I can't speak to things I don't have direct.
Right. I'm quite surprised that within the industry you don't know if we are net exporter of oil.
I think you need to understand that the industry is split into two. We have the petroleum downstream industry and we have the petroleum upstream industry.
I understand. I understand that the industry is split into two.
Your surprise here needs to be clarified because I can't speak to things I don't have direct information on. So
Okay.
I cannot categorically make comments on things I don't have direct information.
I see. Let me bring in Nanamwesi. Maybe he knows what you don't know. Sorry about that. Let's try and read Nanamwesi back on the phone line. But because you use a lot of ifs and buts, maybe I'll also go into the ifs and buts conversation. If let's assume that Ghana is a net exporter of crude oil because now our Tema oil refinery is not running. Number one, so it means that what we drill here, we will have to take them out. The global prices that you mentioned, which influence, in addition to taxes and other things that will reflect at the pump, all right? We'll focus on also what we get from selling our raw crude to the rest of the world or whoever is processing it. Where does the windfall go? Because if the prices rise on the global market, we are supposed to get the flow over. Do we get a windfall for any of these things? Do you know?
So again, you are taking me into an area I don't have control over. Revenue from petroleum export goes to the Ministry of Finance. I don't speak on these issues. I speak on regulating the petroleum downstream industry and ensuring that the pricing of finished petroleum products have been done according to the formula that we have for it to be done, and ensuring that the consumer is getting value for money at that end. When it comes to revenues that come to government through petroleum exports and taxes and what it is used for, unfortunately, I cannot speak on that. I don't have information on that.
I thank you very much for your time. Abbas Ibrahim Tasunti, Head of Economic Regulation at the NPA. He insists that the gold for oil policy is a good one and must be continued. Thank you for your time. Grateful.
You're welcome.
Great. And we're definitely now into Community Connect because today is the People's Forum. Today is our own town hall meeting. And we want to give you an opportunity, give the microphone to you throughout the show. On raging issues and matters arising, you will have a chance to also tell us what it is that is on your mind on all the matters that have been that are arising in this country. Nana Mwesi joins us now. on the phone line. He is an executive director of the Institute for Energy Security. Nana Mwesi the seven. Nana Onkwado Akwaba.
Yeah, Major Domedeshe. Good morning to you, to your listeners, Johnny.
Thank you, Nana. So I've been thinking about gold for oil. Number one, tell me, is it a good policy?
Johnny, first I want to know my other colleague who came on the line.
Right.
Who did you speak to initially?
Well, I spoke to him about gold for oil. He says it is a good initiative. I asked him why we have gold for oil and our fuel prices at the pumps are still going up. He gives me some dynamics that, well, exchange rates here and, all of it, but it's relatively cheaper now. I wanted to find out from him, but he said he didn't have the answers. Maybe we begin from where we left off. That if Ghana is a net exporter of crude, which I wanted to find out from him, and he said he didn't have that answer. Maybe you do. Is Ghana a net exporter of crude?
Okay, so I've gotten two questions, but I wanted to know who you spoke to.
Abbas Ibrahim Tasunti is the head of economic regulation of
Abbas from MPA.
That's right.
Oh, super. Okay, that's okay.
That will influence what you say going forward, eh?
Yes, if you know, I see the career of the message also counts in the value you place on the message or the information. Yes, you first asked whether we are a net exporter of crude oil.
That's right.
Okay, so it's two things. If all the oil we produce today is owned by Ghana, then of course we are net exporter because we produce more barrels than what we consume. And so there's a surplus. That surplus gives you that positive position as a net exporter. If we were producing less than what we consume on daily basis, then of course we'll have been a net importer. So that's one. Number two, we just have about 17%. We only just have about 17% of what is produced on daily basis. And on that basis, what Ghana earns from its oil production upstream is far lesser than what we consume in a day. And so Ghana's share of the crude oil against our daily consumption, you can look at it and declare that we are a net importer. But if we're able to take even what the other players take, their take from the oil production, if Ghana is able to buy it and we make use of it locally, we'll have been a net exporter because we own that crude oil, but then it's owned by others. The next is that there's no problem owning just a portion of it because of the production sharing contract. Irrespective of that, whatever is produced, whether it's owned by Nadako, Talo, or whoever, ENI, if we are ready, we can equally buy it just like others buy. In 2016, should I say, December, the Temoyo refinery took a parcel of crude oil from the same field, and they refined it in the earliest part of 2017. That is Ghana's crude oil, but that's not Ghana's parcel of crude oil. It was bought from AOT. So it means it wasn't Ghana's share of the crude oil, but both made a conscious effort to utilize our indigenous crude oil. And that time, you remember, Johnny, Boss was doing a tolling agreement with Tor, where they bring in crude oil for Tor to refine, and they pay Tor for every barrel that is cracked. And Boss would take custody of the refined product, store, transport, sell onto the market. And so Boss was taken from Nigeria, from Angola and the rest, and happened to also pick it from Ghana's oil field from a private supplier, AOT. And so that is what I can say to our oil position and Ghana's, ability to take part of this produced oil and crack for domestic use and also for export.
I see. Now, let's clarify the figures. NPA says 18%. You were talking 17%. What is the actual figure?
It differs from, and so it's an average that we are all using. And so you can go with any of these numbers because when you go into the ENI and Ghana's oil production contract, the fiscal terms are different from that of Talu and Ghana, the Jubilee Field and the rest. So it varies. The fiscal terms vary. So we can take the 18, we can take 17. It's an average we are all quoting.
Now, is the gold for oil a good policy?
Well, first you want to look at first its arrangement, the scheme used, and also the idea behind it and the impacts. You can consider all this to draw your conclusion. From the very scratch, we had a problem with it when the government said that they were going to do a barter arrangement. And in a barter arrangement, it's not like for like. Somebody will have to lose something, the other person will have to gain. And we gauge Nigeria's program where Nigeria also give crude oil to private players. Then the private players also give them refined fuel, imported refined fuel. So it's an exchange. We also gauge that of Iran. They did oil for food program some many years ago. In these two schemes, as we look at it, there is an intermediary or an agency, a broker. It is that platform that you find corruption and a possible, shortchanging of one person or the other. And so these two arrangements, you can say that the barter trading arrangement brews corruption. There is no transparency. And in a system where there is no transparency and disclosure, then of course, corruption breeds itself and multiplies. So we had that concern. Today, there is still no clarity. There is still no disclosure, and we find no transparency in the whole scheme. Some of us will have to snoop and get some of the information. Today we can say that we have almost all the vessels that are brought in cargo for bust. But how many Ghanaians know this? We need to declare who is a supplier, how much it was bought for, because it is our money. It is our resources that's being used for all this arrangement. We're also concerned about a simple, equation. You are using your Ghana cedis to buy mop-up gold, and you want to exchange it for oil. And we say gold itself is dollar. You sell your gold, you have your dollars. You can buy oil at any point in time. And you have enough dollars in your vault. And there are excesses. Then, of course, you are stability in your own currency. Why exchange the raw gold with oil? Now it came to light that even the first person and the others that followed were not bought with gold, but with cash. Did we use cedis or we use dollars? We are where we are, Johnny. And so we said that the gold for oil program, it's not transparent and it's not sustainable going forward. You see, government will want to take credit when prices are dropping, and they will say it's good for oil program that is doing that. And now we still have the gold for oil. Prices are going up. Who takes that credit? Johnny? Who is taking that credit?
You tell me. So the gentleman from MPA mentions exchange rates. I added the layer of taxes and levies and all of that to it. But what really is causing the prices at the pump to go up, especially if we have such a policy in place. We're told by the Vice President that we should expect that fuel prices will drop. We're told that gold for oil has stabilized the cedi. So what else is causing this? Which devil is that?
It's a point. I heard him say that what we are seeing today is because the exchange rate has gone up. And what did the gold for oil do to this exchange rate this time? Johnny, we are basically price takers. We don't produce gasoline here. We don't produce gas oil. We don't produce ATK. We don't produce fuel oil and the likes. Everything that we consume as a country is imported. And so we are exposed to international prices. Anytime international prices go up, suppliers will also want to inch up their price to reflect the market price. The BDCs or the importers will equally transfer the changes in price. If it's upward, they will transfer it to the consumer or the OMC. OMC will do the same to the consumer. If it's negative. And so it is international prices. And I'll share with you later some graphs. And you realize that at the time that we were buying a gallon of diesel for almost 23 cedis per gallon, no, per liter. Johnny, the international price of gas oil was $1,221 per metric ton. Today it's $803 per metric ton. That's why you see price drop. At the time we started Go For Your program, Johnny, it was late January. And so the first week of February, it came to the market. Did you know how much international price was?
You tell me.
It was $853 per metric ton. And the local price at that time, Johnny, give me a second. Local price at that time was 15 to the 30 pesos. It was not 23 cedis. Go For Your program started the first parcel came in January. The product hit the market the first week of February. Price was 15 cedis, 30 pesos. It was not 23 cedis when we started Go For Your program. And so we shouldn't confuse ourselves. I heard the Minister of Energy say that Go For Your program is able to bring fuel down from 23 cedis and all that. That was in November 2022. Let's not mislead ourselves. And since then, international price of diesel has continued to drop up to 813 today. At a point, it even came to 809. Let me see the August figures, Johnny.
Quickly.
Okay, so I'm looking at the trend from September 2022 to August 2023. International price of diesel was February 2023. It was $853 per metric ton. It started dropping consistently all the way to $673 per metric ton in May. In May, the local price of diesel came to 12 cedis, 10 pesos per liter. Fast forward, today, international price is $902 per metric ton. And look at Ghana's price, domestic, 13.7 cedis per liter. It's a reflection, a clear reflection of international price. And if I give you the graph, you will see that the graph are almost running sync. That is for international price of diesel and domestic price of diesel. We are price takers.
Okay.
There's not been any magic. Government have done all this while.
I see. And I thank you very much indeed for your time. We're grateful.
Thank you, Johnny.
Great.
For having me.
Great. And that's Nana Moisi, the 7th Institute of Energy Security Executive Director. And you're live on Community Connect on 3FM 92.7. The office of the Awamafia stated the 14th of August 2023, addressed to the Honorable Minister of Interior and Bruce Derry. Attention to Dr. George Akufu Dampare, is the Inspector General of Police, and it says, "Dear Sir,